The Galactic Council chamber of Nexus Prime resembled a dark vault of multicolored light, the emanations from the 47 species communication terminals casting strange shadows across the circular hall. Ambassador Mira Solis sat at the human delegation station, her face illuminated by the soft blue glow of her datapad. After 37 years of service to Earth's diplomatic corps, she still found the grandeur of the chamber both awe-inspiring and intimidating. Today marked the 300th year of humanity's admission to the Council. 3 centuries since Earth had proven its technological prowess and cultural stability to the satisfaction of the elder races. 3 centuries of carefully navigating the complex web of interspecies politics, trade agreements, and defense treaties. "Ambassador Solis," came a melodic voice to her left. Mira turned to see her junior aide, Jalen Voss, his youthful face serious beneath a shock of dark hair. At 28, he was the youngest member of Earth's delegation. Brilliant, but still learning the delicate art of council politics. "The Zathari delegation has requested a private conference before today's session," Jalen said quietly, his voice barely audible over the ambient hum of translation devices throughout the chamber. Mira nodded, her expression carefully neutral. The Zathari, one of the founding species of the Council, had been increasingly vocal about their concerns regarding human expansion in the Orion Spur. Their crystalline bodies shimmered with internal light as they moved, their race ancient when humans were still hunting with stone tools. "Tell them I'll meet in conference room Epsilon in 20 minutes, she replied. Scanning the room, the alliances were shifting. She could feel it. The Kaldar representatives, hulking and amphibious, were deep in conversation with the insectoid Vexcar, both species traditionally neutral toward human interests. Now, they cast occasional glances toward the human station, their body language suggesting discomfort. Mira's comlink buzzed with a priority message from Earth. President Arjun Rao's face appeared on her private screen, his dark eyes intense beneath silver-streaked hair. "Mira, our intelligence suggests something unusual is brewing in today's session. The Praxis Coalition has been meeting privately with the elder races. Be vigilant." The Praxis Coalition, 17 species aligned around a philosophy of controlled, measured galactic development. They had long opposed humanity's rapid expansion and technological innovations, claiming humans moved too quickly, changed too much, respected tradition too little. "Understood. Mr. President, I've noticed increased activity among several delegations. Good luck, Ambassador. Remember, 300 years has earned us the right to be heard. Earth stands with you." The communication ended, and Mira rose to her feet, smoothing the formal blue uniform that designated her as Earth's voice in this ancient assembly. She had 15 minutes before the meeting with the Zathari, enough time to observe the room's subtle currents of power. The chamber housed representatives from 47 spacefaring species, arranged in concentric rings according to their tenure in galactic politics. The inner circle belonged to the founders, the Zathari, the Mektora, and the long-extinct Prasari, whose empty seat remained as tradition dictated. Humanity's position in the third ring reflected their relative youth in cosmic terms. As Mira made her way toward the exit, she passed the vacant station of the Dravari, a humanoid species who had withdrawn from the Council 30 years earlier after a territorial dispute. Their worlds now existed in self-imposed isolation, their once vibrant trade routes abandoned. A cautionary tale, the elders often said, of what happened when cooperation failed. Speaker Velinor of the Zathari waited in conference room Epsilon, his crystalline form glittering under the soft lighting. 2 junior Zathari stood behind him, their faceted heads inclined in formal greeting. "Ambassador Solis." Velinor's translated voice resonated with the characteristic harmonic undertones of his species. "We appreciate your promptness." Mira performed the traditional greeting gesture, right hand open at chest level, palm upward, and took her seat across the polished table. "The human delegation values dialogue with our esteemed colleagues," How may I assist you today? Velenor's crystalline form shifted colors slightly, from azure to a deeper cobalt, an indication of serious intent among his kind. We speak to you today out of respect for our long association. A motion will be presented in today's session. Council Vote 7722. It concerns human activity in sectors previously allocated for preservation. Mira kept her expression neutral, though inwardly she tensed. The preservation argument had been used before to limit human expansion, often in resource-rich regions that older species wish to keep in reserve for future generations. Their future generations. We have adhered to all council-approved boundaries, she replied evenly. The terms of adherence are what will be debated, Velenor said, his voice resonating at a deeper frequency. The Praxis Coalition has gathered significant support for a revision of human trade and defense mandates. Revision? Mira's diplomatic training couldn't entirely suppress the sharpness in her tone. Without prior consultation with Earth's government? The matter has evolved rapidly, Velenor replied, his crystalline surface now pulsing with bands of indigo, a sign of discomfort or possibly evasion. We wish to inform you as a courtesy before the formal presentation. I appreciate the gesture, Mira said, though they both recognized the words as diplomatic formality. May I inquire about the specific nature of these revisions? They will be presented in full during the session, Velenor answered, rising to his full height of nearly 7 feet. I have fulfilled my obligation to inform you. The council convenes in 30 minutes. With that, the Zathari delegation departed, leaving Mira alone with a growing sense of foreboding. She immediately contacted Jalen and her senior staff to prepare for what was clearly going to be a challenging session. When the council formally convened, Mira found herself scanning the chamber with new awareness. The subtle positioning of delegations, the unusual quietness of species typically vocal during proceedings, all pointed to prior arrangements, discussions from which humanity had been deliberately excluded. Speaker Velenor ascended to the central podium, his crystalline form now radiating the formal white light of official council business. Esteemed representatives of the 47 worlds, we convene today for the 9,782nd session of the Galactic Council. His translated voice echoed throughout the chamber. Our first matter of business is Council Vote 7722, pertaining to the revision of human trade and defense mandates within council space. A holographic display materialized above the central floor, showing a complex document with numerous subsections and appendices. Mira's aide transmitted it to her personal device for immediate analysis. But even at first glance, she could see radical changes to humanity's standing. Speaker Velenor continued. The Praxis Coalition, with the support of 29 council members, proposes the following amendments. Restriction of human colony expansion to current boundaries for a period of not less than 50 standard years. Revocation of independent defense authorization in the Orion Spur. Mandatory oversight of human technological development in categories 1 through 7. And reclassification of Earth's council status from full member to provisional overseen member. Murmurs spread throughout the chamber as Mira rose to her feet, invoking the right of immediate response. Speaker Velenor, the human delegation requests clarification on the justification for these unprecedented restrictions, which violate no fewer than 17 existing treaties. The Zathari's crystalline form pulsed with bands of deep purple. The justification, Ambassador Solus, is the preservation of galactic stability. Human expansion and technological development have proceeded at rates deemed potentially destabilizing by a significant majority of council species. Destabilizing, Mira kept her voice level, though anger flared within her. In 3 centuries of membership, humanity has adhered to every regulation, contributed to every joint scientific initiative, participated in every peacekeeping mission requested of us. Your adherence to the letter of our agreements is acknowledged, said Trelmar of the Vexcar, rising from the insectoid delegation station. It is the spirit that concerns us. Humans move too quickly, change too readily, innovate without sufficient contemplation of consequences. Mira scanned the room, noting with growing alarm that many traditionally neutral delegations were indicating agreement with the Vexcar's statement. The human delegation requests a formal period of consultation before any vote on these measures, she said, invoking an ancient council provision. These proposals represent a fundamental alteration to Earth's standing and require direct communication with our government. Granted, Speaker Velinor acknowledged, as was required by council law. The vote will be scheduled for 7 standard days hence. This session is adjourned for deliberation. As the delegations began to disperse, Jalen approached Mira, his expression grave. "This is worse than anything we anticipated," he said quietly. "They're essentially proposing to reduce us to the status we held 200 years ago." Mira nodded, her mind already racing through implications and possibilities. "Contact the president immediately. We need a secure channel. And get me everything we have on recent Praxis Coalition activities, trading patterns, diplomatic exchanges, military movements." "Do you think they're genuinely concerned about stability? Or is this about something else?" Jalen asked, as they exited the chamber. Mira's expression hardened. "In 3 centuries of diplomacy, I've learned one constant truth. When someone claims to act for your own good, look for what benefits them." Back in the secure confines of the Earth Embassy on Nexus Prime, Mira faced President Rao on a quantum-encrypted channel, the connection untraceable even by the Council's advanced monitoring systems. "They've been planning this for years," the president said, his usually calm demeanor replaced by controlled anger. "Our intelligence suggests the Praxis Coalition has been systematically acquiring control of trade routes that would become critical if human shipping were restricted. Financial opportunism disguised as concern for galactic stability," Mira observed grimly. "Classic." "It's more than that," Rao replied. "The restrictions on our defense capabilities would leave 17 of our outer colonies vulnerable to piracy, or worse, to protective occupation by Council forces." Mira paced the secure room, mind working through scenarios. "What options are we considering?" "The Security Council is divided," Rao admitted. "Some advocate for appeasement, accept the restrictions temporarily, while working to reverse them through traditional diplomatic channels. Others—" he hesitated. "Others suggest more dramatic responses," Mira finished for him. "Yes," Rao confirmed. "Admiral Choi has presented a contingency for complete withdrawal from the Council. It would be unprecedented. No major species has ever voluntarily withdrawn." "The Dravari withdrew," Mira pointed out. "The Dravari controlled 12 systems," Rao countered. "We have colonies or installations in over 200. The economic disruption alone would be catastrophic, at least initially." Mira considered this. What would withdrawal actually entail? Legally, we'd invoke Article 87 of the Founding Charter, which allows for voluntary separation with 1 standard year's notice. During that year, we'd be required to settle all outstanding trade obligations and transition any shared defense responsibilities. And after the year, Rao's expression grew somber. "We'd be on our own. No council protection, no guaranteed trade access, no participation in collective security arrangements. Every relationship with every species would have to be negotiated bilaterally. Some might refuse to deal with us at all," Mira noted. "Yes," Rao agreed. "Though our analysis suggests many of the younger species, and even some elder ones, would maintain relations, quietly at first, then openly as the economic benefits became clear." Mira sat down heavily in her chair. 300 years of integration, undone in a moment. "Not undone," Rao corrected her. "Transformed. The question is whether transformation is preferable to subjugation." Their discussion continued for hours, weighing options, calculating risks, considering the fate of billions of humans spread across hundreds of worlds. By the time they concluded, Mira had her instructions. For the next 7 days, the human delegation engaged in a flurry of official consultations and unofficial lobbying. They met with representatives from every council species, presenting data on the mutual benefits of continued human participation under current terms. They highlighted the humanitarian work of Human Medical Corps on developing worlds, the security provided by human patrol vessels in pirate-plagued sectors, the scientific breakthroughs shared freely with all council members. Some delegations seemed sympathetic, but unwilling to oppose the Praxis coalition openly. Others were coldly dismissive of human concerns. A few, mostly younger species who had themselves faced discrimination from the elder races, expressed genuine support. But they lacked the political capital to sway the vote. On the 7th day, the council reconvened. The chamber felt different to Mira now, no longer a place of collaborative governance, but an arena where humanity stood accused and outnumbered. Speaker Velinor called the session to order. We return to Council Vote 77-2 regarding the revision of human trade and defense mandates. Has the human delegation prepared a response to the proposed measures? Mira rose, feeling the weight of history upon her shoulders. We have, Speaker. The human delegation respectfully rejects the proposed restrictions as unjustified, discriminatory, and contrary to the foundational principles of this council. Murmurs spread through the chamber as Mira continued, her voice growing stronger. For 3 centuries, humanity has honored its commitments to this body. We have contributed to collective security, shared our scientific advancements, provided humanitarian aid to dozens of developing worlds. We have done so in good faith, believing in the Council's stated commitment to equality among member species. She gestured to the holographic display, where the proposed restrictions still hovered. These measures reveal that such equality was always an illusion. They represent not concern for stability, but fear of change, and opportunistic exploitation disguised as caution. Speaker Velinor's crystalline form pulsed with agitated red light. Ambassador Solis, I must caution you against impugning the motives of council members. I speak only observable truth, Mira replied firmly. And I am not finished. She drew herself to her full height, addressing the entire chamber now. If these measures are approved, the government of Earth will be forced to reconsider its membership in this council. We will not accept a return to second-class status. We will not surrender our right to protect our citizens or develop our potential. The chamber erupted in overlapping translations as dozens of species reacted simultaneously. Some delegates appeared shocked, others triumphant, still others calculating. Speaker Velinor struck the ceremonial resonator, restoring order. Your statement borders on threat, Ambassador, he said, his translated voice tight with restraint. The Council does not respond well to ultimatums. It is not an ultimatum, but a consequence. Mira replied. You have presented us with a choice between submission and independence. If you force that choice upon us, you must be prepared for our decision. The vote, when it came, was decisive. 31 in favor of the restrictions, 12 opposed, 4 abstaining. As the results appeared above the central floor, Mira felt a strange calm settle over her. The path forward, previously clouded with diplomatic complexity, now stretched clear before her. In light of this decision, she said, her voice steady, I am instructed by my government to invoke Article 87 of the Founding Charter. Earth hereby gives formal notice of its intention to withdraw from the Galactic Council, effective 1 standard year from today's date. The silence that followed was absolute. In 3 millennia of Council history, no major species had ever voluntarily withdrawn. The Dravari incident was considered an aberration, a small, prideful species retreating into isolation. Humanity, with its hundreds of colonies and vast economic network, was a different matter entirely. "This is unprecedented," Speaker Velinor finally said, visible disturbance rippling through his crystalline form. "As are the measures you have approved today," Mira replied. "We will, of course, honor all obligations during the transition period as specified in the Charter. Human representatives will participate in all scheduled sessions until our withdrawal becomes final." With that, she gathered her materials and, followed by her stunned delegation, exited the chamber with measured dignity. Only, when they reached the privacy of their embassy, did she allow herself to sink into a chair, the weight of what had just transpired finally settling upon her. "Did we just leave the Galactic Council?" Jalen asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "We gave notice," Mira corrected him. "We have 1 year to prepare, or for the Council to come to its senses." "Do you think they will?" another aide asked. Mira considered the question carefully. "Some might wish to, but the Praxis Coalition has invested too much in this outcome to reverse course easily. They believe we're bluffing, that when faced with actual withdrawal, we'll accept their terms." "Are we bluffing?" Jalen asked directly. Mira met his gaze steadily. "That depends on what happens in the next year. President Rao has authorized me to negotiate a reversal of these restrictions up until the final day. But preparations for independence will proceed simultaneously." "Independence?" Jalen repeated the word as if testing its sound. "Can we truly stand alone against the entire council?" "Not against them," Mira said firmly. "Apart from them. There's a difference. And we won't be entirely alone. Several delegations have already privately expressed interest in maintaining bilateral relations after our withdrawal." What followed was the most intense year of Mira's long diplomatic career. On the surface, human participation in council activities continued normally. Representatives attended committees, fulfilled security obligations, maintained trade according to existing agreements. But beneath this veneer of continuity, a massive reorganization was underway. Human cargo convoys were quietly rerouted, establishing new supply chains that didn't depend on council infrastructure. Colonial defense forces conducted routine exercises that positioned them strategically for self-reliance. Scientists accelerated research into technologies that could replace council-provided services. The impact of the impending withdrawal began to manifest in unexpected ways. Several developing worlds that had relied on human medical corps suddenly found their council-assigned replacements inadequate. Pirate activity increased in sectors where human patrol vessels had been ordered to reduce their presence. Trade in certain specialized goods faltered as human merchants began limiting their inventories in preparation for new arrangements. 3 months after the withdrawal notice, the first cracks in the Council's united front appeared. The Talaxian Confederation, 7 worlds with close economic ties to human colonies, formally protested the restrictions that had precipitated Earth's decision. The impending human withdrawal threatens the stability it was supposedly meant to preserve. Their representative argued in open session, "We urge reconsideration before irreparable damage is done to the galactic economy." The Praxis Coalition dismissed these concerns, pointing to contingency plans for replacing human contributions to council systems. But as the months passed, those contingencies proved increasingly inadequate. 6 months in, the Mectora, one of the founding species, broke ranks with their traditional allies and proposed a modification to the restrictions. Perhaps a more moderate approach would better serve stability. Their elder suggested, careful not to lose face by directly admitting error. Certain aspects of the human mandates could be restored in exchange for enhanced oversight. Mira, following her instructions, engaged with these overtures politely, but non-committally. "Earth remains open to fair and equal participation in the Council," she stated repeatedly. "We cannot accept second-class status, but we value the relationships built over 3 centuries of cooperation." Meanwhile, Admiral Lena Choi oversaw the most significant military redeployment in human history. As the senior commander of Earth's space fleet, She was responsible for ensuring humanity could defend itself without Council support. The biggest vulnerability is Nexus Prime itself, she explained, during a secure briefing with Mira and President Rao. The station houses not only the Council chambers, but the central hub of the galactic communication network. If they decide to restrict our access as punishment for withdrawal, dozens of our colonies could be cut off from Earth. Can we establish alternative communications? Rao asked. We're deploying our own relay network, Choi confirmed. But it won't be fully operational for another 8 months. There will be a period of vulnerability. What about defense? Mira asked. The outer colonies are already reporting increased incursions. Officially, we're still under Council protection for another 6 months, Choi said. Unofficially, I've dispatched rapid response flotillas to key junction points. If trouble starts, we won't wait for Council approval to protect our people. As the 1-year mark approached, tensions escalated. The Praxis Coalition, seeing their plans for controlled human subjugation slipping away, became increasingly hostile in Council sessions. Speaker Velanor, once the picture of crystalline composure, now pulsed with angry red light whenever addressing the human delegation. Your preparations for withdrawal constitute a breach of trust, he declared during one particularly heated session. Military exercises beyond authorized parameters, trade agreements with non-Council worlds, technological developments not submitted for review. These actions demonstrate precisely why the original restrictions were necessary. With respect, Speaker, Mira replied calmly. Every action you've mentioned is explicitly permitted under Article 87's transition provisions. We are preparing for the status you imposed upon us. Nothing more. 9 months into the transition, a crisis erupted that tested humanity's resolve. The colony world of Nuova Terra, located at the edge of Council space, suffered a catastrophic seismic event. Under normal circumstances, Council emergency protocols would have activated, bringing aid from multiple species. But with human withdrawal pending, the response was deliberately slowed by bureaucratic obstacles. They're making an example of us, Mira told President Rao during an emergency communication, showing what happens to those who leave Council protection. Then we'll make an example of ourselves, Rao replied grimly. Deploy everything we have. I want those colonists saved, and I want every species in the galaxy to see that humanity takes care of its own. What followed became known as the Nuova Terra intervention, the largest humanitarian operation ever conducted by a single species. Human ships from across settled space converged on the stricken world, bringing medical personnel, engineers, and relief supplies. When Council officials attempted to assert authority over the operation, they were politely but firmly informed that human vessels no longer required their authorization. The images broadcast across the galaxy showed a stark contrast. Council representatives debating proper protocols, while human rescue teams pulled survivors from rubble. The propaganda victory was accidental, but complete. Several neutral species publicly questioned the wisdom of forcing such a capable and committed civilization out of the Council. In the final months, President Rao authorized a dramatic technological unveiling. For decades, human scientists had been developing a revolutionary propulsion system, one that would reduce interstellar travel time by nearly 60%. Under Council regulations, such technology would have required decades of review before approval for general use. The quantum fold drive is now available to all human worlds and any non-Council species interested in fair trade agreements. Rao announced in a galaxy-wide broadcast, "We developed this technology in accordance with all safety protocols, but we will no longer delay innovation based on excessive caution or political considerations." The response was immediate. Dozens of independent worlds and even some Council-affiliated species made discreet inquiries about access to the new technology. The economic implications were staggering. Whoever controlled the fastest shipping would dominate trade. 2 weeks before the final withdrawal date, Speaker Velanor requested a private meeting with Mira. They met in the same conference room, where, a year earlier, he had informed her of the coming restrictions. "The Council has authorized me to present a compromise proposal," he said without preamble, his crystalline form subdued to a neutral blue. The more severe restrictions would be lifted. Human expansion would be permitted to resume under mutually agreed parameters. Defense autonomy would be restored in human-settled regions. Mira studied him carefully. And in exchange? Technology sharing would follow established protocols. The quantum fold drive would be submitted for Council review, and Earth would withdraw its Article 87 notice, remaining a full Council member. It was, Mira realized, very close to a complete capitulation disguised as compromise. A year ago, she might have considered it a diplomatic victory. Now, it seemed like a step backward. "I will convey your proposal to my government," she said formally. "But I must note that circumstances have evolved considerably since these matters were first raised." "Meaning?" Velenor's tone sharpened. "Meaning that what might have been acceptable as a preventative measure may no longer be sufficient as a remedy." Mira replied. "Independence, once contemplated, is not easily set aside." The final Council session with human participation was scheduled for exactly 1 year after the withdrawal notice. By tradition, it should have been a formality, a simple acknowledgement that Article 87 had been invoked and the separation was complete. Instead, the chamber was filled to capacity. Every delegation was present, an unprecedented attendance for what should have been a procedural matter. The atmosphere was charged with tension and unspoken possibilities. Speaker Velenor called the session to order, his crystalline form rigidly formal. "We convene today to address the pending withdrawal of Earth and its colonies from the Galactic Council, as notified under Article 87-1 standard year ago. Ambassador Solis, does the human delegation wish to make a statement before the withdrawal becomes final?" Mira rose, feeling the weight of billions of human lives and 3 centuries of history upon her shoulders. The chamber seemed cavernous now, the once impressive array of species diminished somehow by the pettiness that had brought them to this moment. "Speaker Velenor, esteemed representatives," she began, her voice clear and carrying to every corner of the hall. "1 year ago, this Council chose to impose restrictions that would have reduced humanity to subordinate status. You did so not because we had violated any agreement, but because our growth and innovation made some among you uncomfortable." She paused, looking around the chamber slowly. "In the years since, we have demonstrated what humanity brings to this assembly: our resilience, our compassion, our ingenuity. The Nuova Terra intervention showed our commitment to humanitarian principles, even when political advantage lay elsewhere. The quantum fold drive represents the innovation you sought to constrain. These achievements were not made to prove our worth to you," she continued. "We have nothing to prove. They represent who we are, a species that refuses to be limited by fear or tradition when lives can be saved and horizons expanded." Murmurs spread through the chamber, but Mira raised her hand for silence. "President Rao has authorized me to present the Council with a final opportunity. Rescind all restrictions imposed by Vote 7722. Acknowledge humanity's full and equal status among spacefaring civilizations. Establish new protocols for technological review that encourage rather than impede innovation." "In exchange?" Speaker Velenor asked, visible tension rippling through his crystalline structure. "In exchange, we will withdraw our Article 87 notice and remain within the Council, as equals, not as subjects." The chamber erupted in overlapping translations and exclamations. Some delegations seemed relieved at this potential resolution. Others, outraged at what they perceived as human dictation of terms. Speaker Velenor struck the resonator repeatedly, struggling to restore order. When the chamber finally quieted, he addressed Mira with barely contained agitation. "The Council does not respond to ultimatums. Ambassador Solis, these terms amount to a complete reversal of a properly ratified Council vote. Such a precedent would undermine the very foundation of our governance. Mira nodded, having expected this response. Then, we have nothing more to discuss. In accordance with Article 87, I hereby confirm that Earth and all human-settled worlds formally withdraw from the Galactic Council, effective immediately. With those words, she activated a small device on her wrist. Throughout the Nexus Prime Station, human personnel, engineers, security officers, administrative staff, simultaneously engaged emergency protocols that had been prepared over the past year. The chamber's lighting flickered momentarily. A low hum that had been so constant, most species no longer noticed it. The sound of the station's life support systems faltered briefly before stabilizing. "What is happening?" Speaker Velinor demanded, alarm evident in his rapidly shifting colors. "A demonstration," Mira replied calmly. "For 3 centuries, humans have served as primary engineers and maintenance technicians for the station. Did you think we would leave our people vulnerable to retribution after our departure?" On cue, Admiral Choi's face appeared on the central holographic display, replacing the Council's symbolic emblem. "This is Admiral Lena Choi of Earth Space Fleet. An orbital defense grid has been activated around Nexus Prime. All vessels attempting unauthorized departure will be intercepted. This is a temporary security measure to ensure an orderly transition." Panic spread through the chamber as delegates realized the implications. Humanity had effectively taken control of the Council headquarters, not through military assault, but through the simple fact that they had built and maintained much of its infrastructure. "This is an act of war!" shouted the Vexcar representative, mandibles clicking furiously. "No," Mira corrected firmly. "It is an act of self-preservation. The defense grid will be deactivated once all human personnel have safely departed the station. Life support and essential systems will continue to function normally. We have no desire to harm anyone." She faced Speaker Velinor directly. "For centuries, you have taken human contributions for granted. You assumed we could be controlled because we were integrated into your systems. You failed to recognize that this integration gave us understanding and access that works both ways." "The Council will never forget this betrayal," Velinor said, his crystalline form now pulsing with deep crimson rage. "This is not betrayal," Mira replied. "This is consequence. You chose to treat a partner as a subject. Now you will treat a neighbor as an equal, or not at all." With that, she gathered her materials and signaled to her delegation. Together, they walked out of the Council chamber for the final time, leaving behind stunned silence and the beginning of a new galactic order. The following weeks saw frantic diplomatic activity across known space. The Council, humiliated by its vulnerability, attempted to portray humanity's withdrawal as a dangerous act of rebellion. Meanwhile, human representatives reached out to individual species, offering bilateral agreements on trade, security, and cultural exchange. Many council members, particularly the elder races and those aligned with the Praxis Coalition, rejected these overtures publicly. But others, seeing the shifting balance of power, began quiet negotiations. The quantum fold drive proved an irresistible incentive. Access to the revolutionary technology could elevate a species' economic standing dramatically. 3 months after the withdrawal, Mira found herself aboard the diplomatic vessel Unity, orbiting a non-aligned world where representatives from 27 species had gathered for what was being called the New Accord Summit. Some were former council members who had broken ranks. Others, independent civilizations who had never been granted council membership. "It's not a replacement for the council," she explained to Jalen as they prepared for the opening session. "We're not looking to create another bureaucratic superstructure that eventually calcifies into the same problems." "What is it, then?" he asked, adjusting his formal attire. "A network," Mira replied. "Flexible, adaptable agreements between willing partners. No central authority dictating terms, just mutual respect and shared interests." President Rao had traveled from Earth for the historic occasion, the first time in memory that a sitting human president had left the solar system. As he addressed the assembled representatives, his words were transmitted to every human world and to any non-human civilization willing to receive them. "Today marks not an ending, but a beginning," he said, his voice steady and dignified. "For too long, the galaxy has been governed by fear of change, by deference to tradition, simply because it is tradition. Humanity chooses a different path, not in isolation, but in genuine partnership with all who share our vision of progress tempered by wisdom, innovation guided by compassion." 6 months after withdrawal, the effects were visible throughout human space. Without council restrictions, colony development accelerated. The quantum fold drive revolutionized shipping, cutting transit times so dramatically that perishable goods could now be traded between systems previously considered too distant for practical commerce. There were challenges, of course. Several remote outposts suffered from pirate attacks as council protection was withdrawn. But the response was swift and decisive. Human defense forces, no longer constrained by council protocols, deployed rapidly and with overwhelming force. Within weeks, pirate activity near human settlements had dropped to its lowest level in recorded history. 1 year after withdrawal, Mira stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Harmony Station, humanity's answer to Nexus Prime. Unlike the ancient council headquarters, with its emphasis on tradition and hierarchy, Harmony was designed for functionality and accessibility. Species from across the galaxy mingled freely, conducting trade and cultural exchange without the cumbersome oversight of council committees. "Ambassador," Jalen approached, datapad in hand. "The Talaxian delegation has arrived. They're requesting formal admission to the Accord." Mira smiled. The Talaxians had been among the first to question the wisdom of forcing humanity out of the Council. Now, after months of internal debate, they had decided to follow Earth's path, not withdrawing from the Council entirely, but establishing independent relations through the Accord framework. "Show them to Conference Room Alpha," she said, "and make sure they understand. They're not petitioning for membership as they would with the Council. They're proposing partnership." As Jalen departed, Mira turned back to the viewport. Beyond the station, a steady stream of vessels arrived and departed, human ships alongside alien craft of dozens of designs. In the distance, the sprawling orbital shipyards were visible, constructing the next generation of quantum fold-equipped vessels that would further expand humanity's reach. A message notification appeared on her personal device. It was from Admiral Choi, currently overseeing security for a joint human-Dravari scientific expedition. The Dravari, who had withdrawn from the Council 30 years earlier, had been among the first to reach out after humanity's departure. "Breakthrough achieved," the message read simply. "Interdimensional communication confirmed viable. Implications enormous. Returning to present findings." Mira felt a surge of excitement. If the joint expedition had succeeded in establishing communication across dimensional barriers, it represented a leap forward even more significant than the quantum fold drive. Such technology would never have been approved for development under council restrictions. The conservative elder races would have buried it in review committees for centuries. Her contemplation was interrupted by an incoming transmission, priority diplomatic channel, originating from Nexus Prime. With some surprise, she accepted the call. Speaker Velanor's crystalline form appeared on the screen, his coloration a subdued azure that indicated formal diplomatic intent. "Ambassador Solis," he greeted her, using her title despite the fact that she no longer served as Earth's representative to the Council. "I trust this communication finds you well." "Speaker Velanor," she acknowledged, maintaining the formality he had established. "This is unexpected. Recent developments have prompted reconsideration among certain council members," he said, clearly choosing his words with care. "The success of your Accord initiative has not gone unnoticed. "We never intended to replace the council," Mira replied truthfully. "Only to forge our own path." "A path that grows more crowded by the day," Velinor observed. "3 council species have formally requested permission to establish bilateral relations with Earth outside of council frameworks. Others are considering similar steps." "They are sovereign civilizations," Mira said, "as is humanity." Velinor's form shifted through several color patterns before settling on a hue Mira had rarely seen from him. A gentle green that indicated, if she remembered correctly, conciliation. "The council proposes a dialogue," he said finally. "Not regarding human return. We recognize that path is closed, but perhaps regarding coexistence, coordination where mutual interests align." Mira considered this carefully. It represented a dramatic shift from the Council's previous stance of treating humanity's withdrawal as temporary rebellion that would eventually be rectified. "Earth would be open to such dialogue," she said after a moment. "As an independent power, speaking to the Council as an equal." "Of course," Velinor agreed, though she detected a flicker of darker color suggesting the concession remained difficult for him. "Perhaps a preliminary discussion between representatives?" "Between equals," Mira interrupted gently but firmly. "If the Council wishes to send a delegation to Harmony Station, they would be welcomed as honored guests. If you prefer neutral territory, we can arrange that as well." The conversation continued for some time, establishing preliminary protocols for what would be the first formal diplomatic exchange between the Galactic Council and an independent Earth. When it concluded, Mira remained at the viewport, reflecting on the journey that had brought humanity to this moment. 300 years of council membership had taught humanity valuable lessons about interspecies cooperation, about the complexities of galactic politics, about the delicate balance between tradition and progress. But it had taken withdrawal, standing apart, to truly demonstrate humanity's potential. In the distance, a massive colony ship departed the station, bound for unexplored regions beyond former council space. Its holds contained not just human settlers, but volunteers from a dozen species who had chosen to join the expedition. Together, they would face whatever awaited them, not as representatives of ancient political structures, but as individuals united by curiosity and courage. Mira smiled at the sight. Perhaps that had always been humanity's greatest strength. Not technology or resilience or even adaptability, but the ability to imagine new possibilities, to envision ways of living and cooperating that broke free from established patterns. The day humanity left the Council was the day the universe learned who builds its future. Not those who cling to power, not those who fear change, but those who dare to chart new courses through the stars.